ready and not before.
You will long for
Non-existence, everlasting fire.
Ooh, awakened generosity. Does anyone care about that? Fun fact. Stop dodging. Stop dodging me, dude.
When I'm ready and not before.
Death wins!
13 coins. Cool.
Stand still!
Where is she?
A cascade of pain! Stand still! Cascade of pain! Stand still!
Deathless, zoomed in, essence drain Maven. Let's go.
One of my captors refused with every
Hello, and welcome to the guide for the build that honestly saved the league for me. After fumbling around for the first couple of weeks, I went back to an old trusty, Bane Occultist. I was really curious if it were still viable, and I wanted to find ways to push it above and beyond where I had taken it in the past. From taking down Awakener 8 Cirrus on a 100 Chaos budget, to Maven at 10x, and the Feared and T16 Delirious maps on full investment, this build did everything that I asked of it. The upgrade progression is smooth and logical, and I've self-crafted all of my gear for my moderate amount of currency that I've earned while playing it. I had to get a little creative, figuring out new techniques and synergies and to get around the gem and flask nerfs, but out of the ashes of the 3.15 patch notes, a beautiful dark purple Phoenix has arisen. This is, frankly, the best non-insta-phasing boss killer I've ever played. By layering Aspect of the Spider, Blight Hinder, and a very juiced up temp chains, bosses barely move and you have an absurd amount of time to react to anything that they do. Due to the damage being an asynchronous damage over time, you can comfortably walk around and dodge while keeping up nearly 100% uptime on over 10 million damage per second. Similarly, I find mapping an absolute joy. The full screen pops from Profane Bloom, one-shotting hard expedition rares, and the extreme safety of being a ranged character with a large, easy-to-target spell make it one of the smoothest mappers I've ever played. This video is intended to supplement my previous Bane guide, as it's just taking it to the next level. So if you're curious about the foundation of what I've built here, check it out in the link above. Along with this video guide, I'm attaching a POB with leveling trees and intermediate gear and gem configurations. In addition to that, I'm attaching a spreadsheet with crafting instructions for every piece of gear that I'm using. If there's anything else you would like to see or that I may have missed, let me know in the comments below. Alright, so let's get into it. So here she is, Miss Yandere Mami. That name is legacy from when she was a Summon Reaper character, so please forgive that. Basic idea with the character is that you use Bane for your main clear skill. You just run around baning things and the curses will apply and you get a more damage multiplier based on that. You're scaling chaos damage over time and you kill them. When you need to do more damage, you can throw an Essence Drain out. It's kind of silly. You do have to aim it. That is kind of the downside there. And this thing alone does about 2.5 million damage. So you're just going to be throwing your Banes around. This will do all of your clear. This will kill all the mobs. And then you can just throw a single Essence Drain out and you can just watch the boss die. What I usually do when I walk into a boss room, I'll just Bane, throw an Essence Drain, and I'll just open a portal right there. By the time I can click on the portal again, the boss is already dead. It's pretty slick. And if you want to scale the damage even further, you Bane, Essence Drain, and then you cast Blight. What Blight does with the Threshold Jewel from Spreading Rot is that it inflicts Withered every time it pulses on the monster. combined with me being an occultist who inflicts withered every second I'm standing next to a monster, with spreading rot on the blight, I'm stacking my withered very, very quickly. That is then combined with aspect of the spider and punishment, and the monsters are just taking a ton of damage. Outside of anything except for doing Cirrus and Maven and like the big invitations, Bane and Essence Drain will basically kill the bosses all you need. And then when you do the big boy bosses, you just Bane, Essence Drain, and then you just do Blight. Blight will also hinder the monsters. Aspect of the Spider hinders the monsters. I have a Temp Chains with 87% increased curse effect. And then you can also use Void Sphere for additional hinder, to the point where Cirrus barely moves. You can just sit there and walk circles around him, and you don't even see him attack. It's the easiest thing in the game. In addition to that, I have Arctic Armor, so I'm immune to being frozen. And then I have Flasks that automatically trigger for Shock and Ignite. All I have to worry about is occasionally pressing my Life Flask when I get bled. And I have 76 Chaos Res, so I don't even worry about poison, to be honest. It's a really hands-free setup. It's very smooth. It's low effort to go around and just kill. It's relatively fast running with my Quicksilver Flask. I get full screen pops because of Profane Bloom, and it just feels awesome. Honestly, playing this build again, I fell in love with it all over again, and that's why I wanted to put even more effort into it. I'm at the point with this build and with the league that I don't even want to make another build. I'm actually surprised that I am feeling about this build like I did my Ellie Hit Raider last league. You know, typically with a build that you want to like really go crazy crafting everything, it's something like a bow build or a fizz weapon build that you can like put a lot of work into. But self-crafting all of the gear for this character and really taking the challenge of the puzzle of combining 3.15 and all of the nerfs and all that stuff with revisiting a build that traditionally isn't thought of as a big boss killer. I'm really excited about it. So let's get into all the details. So the gear setup is relatively logical and straightforward to get going. So starting off, you are going to want to grab a Cane of Unraveling as soon as possible. You can level with Essence Drain and Bane all the way up into maps. And then you're going to want to set up a price search for a Cane of Unraveling. You can get this early league for just a couple dozen chaos. You could just rock a 5-link. You can just harvest 5-link something or get the Jeweler's Touch, and you're good to go. You can make it to red maps on a 5-link Cane of Unraveling that you only spent like 20 chaos on. And then later on, by day 3 or 4, you can buy a 6-link one for like 50 chaos, which is what I did. So I used a Cane of Unraveling. This thing took me all the way to Cirrus 8. Granted, Cirrus 8 was pretty slow with this staff, but because I have all of the defensive slowing characteristics, it was actually a very comfortable fight, despite it taking a very long time. The reason why this cane is so good, it just does everything, man. +2 level of all chaos gems, 30% increased chaos damage, some nice mana regen, and then an additional 55 chaos damage over time multiplier. It's really hard to beat this staff, and this will take you all the way to Cirrus. Now, I did try to fight Maven with this thing, and that's kind of where I hit a wall, and I knew I had to take it to the next level. Now, what you'll see a lot of people do is they'll do a bow setup where they have socketed gems, they have the damage over time multiplier, the chaos damage over time multiplier, and they really put all their effort into making their Essence Drain alone be really big. And that's not really what I wanted to do here. I really wanted to stay with the staff lifestyle and look at my damage as being comprehensive, coming from all 3 of my primary damage skills. So the problem with the bow version is it's only socketed gems, whereas with a staff, we actually get +3 to all of our chaos spell skill gems. In addition, another +2, so it's +5 to all of our chaos spell skill gems, and every skill gem that is not chaos still gets +2. So things like Malevolence, Arctic Armor, Steel Skin, right? Everything else still gets +2, and so it's a really good comprehensive quality of life. And that's why I wanted to stick with the staff situation here. As you can tell, the staff is pretty ridiculous. I set up a price search for a fractured, I originally did for +2 level of all spell skill gems, a fracture for that. And that was way out of my price range. There was only one up on a battery staff for 2 exalts, or sorry, for 120 exalts. And that was just out of my price range. I didn't want to do that. Whereas with +3 level of chaos spell skill gems, there were actually a few of them up. There was one for 10x, one for 4x, and one for 2x. and I was very lucky to get the one for 2x. The key here is it is item level 78, which allows us to get the tier, it can go up to tier 1 chaos damage over time multiplier. I only have tier 2, much to my chagrin. I spent a lot of chaos exalts trying to get up to tier 1, but I settled. Then I just threw fossils at it, only about 50 chaos worth of fossils. I hit the +2 all spell skill gems. Then I Ashling slammed and did prefixes cannot be changed, reforged chaos until I had the chaos dot. And that's how I have this staff. And this thing alone just juices up the numbers on everything here. So if you look at my essence train, it is actually level 32. And that's why this thing alone is doing 2.5 million DPS. I can just toss an essence train and it will kill nearly any mob in the game. And it lasts 5.3 seconds. So one essence train does over 13 million damage total. Pretty cool. So I wanted to start with the big boy, and then now I want to show that the rest of my gear is not crazy, actually. And that's what's so awesome about this build. Besides the staff, everything else is pretty pedestrian, honestly. So this helmet, the key here is nearby enemies have -9 chaos res. That's from Hunter. And then we used an Awakener's Orb, and we put on the 5% reduced reservation of skills from Redeemer. And everything else on this helmet is kind of crappy. It's kind of crappy. I got accuracy rating, tier 3 energy shield, nothing special. The key here is I went for that reduced reservation because I like to reserve Arctic Armor and Malevolence, and it let me sneak in Aspect of the Spider while still having a very comfortable margin on my mana, which is very important. I really value the quality of life there. And then for the base, I have 15% increased effective curses applied by Bane. You can get maybe a little bit more damage if you get the 30% increased effective despair, but I already am scaling my despair effect alone so much, and I am using punishment, which increases damage taken for mobs when they're below half life, that I actually prefer all the curses for quality of life because it also juices up my temp chains, which just makes the build more fun to play. For the amulet, I threw, I don't know, probably between 30 and 50 aberrant fossils at it. I hit so the key here was hitting all chaos skill gems and chaos damage over time multiplier. I only even hit tier 2 because I also landed on spell damage. I just said good enough. Good enough. And then I crafted Aspect of the Spider on it. I don't even have life on the prefix, and I crafted cold res. So whatever. And then I allocate corruption because it's just the best quality of life that we can get here. We get some energy shield leech, we get some damage, and withered gets an increased effect, which is a huge damage multiplier for us. So for my first ring, I put the Noxious Catalyst on it for physical and damage modifiers to get scaled. And I took an Iolite ring, which scales my chaos damage. Then I threw Deafening Essences of Envy at it to put the chaos damage suffix on it. I just threw maybe 10 at it until I hit some pretty decent suffixes. Then I did an Ashling Slam, and I got the reduced mana cost of skills, whatever, and then I crafted damage, so no big deal, honestly. The second ring, I actually crafted this through ROG, surprisingly enough. So this was pretty rad. I just went in there, I put in an amethyst ring, we got some decent stuff on it, and then I hit it with another Ashling Slam that I found, and this is what I got. Pretty good, nothing special. Honestly, what would be better would be another Iolite ring like this, but because I have so much quality of life here that I'm just hanging on to it. I also very much value the chaos resistance here. By having an amethyst ring base, I really like having my max chaos res. So I'm doing that, and then I have non-channeling skills, have minus mana cost, just makes everything a little bit more comfortable. For the belt, I bought an Elder Stygian Vise. I got this very early on for cheap for 1 Exalt, and I threw it into a couple Harvest Reforged Lives. Got something okay. There's nothing special on it. And then socketed in the belt, I have a Corrupted Blood Jewel that just has some stats. For the boots, these are kind of silly, honestly. So I found a synth base that has increased energy shield, which is just local, so it doesn't really scale that much. And so because we don't hit at all, we're just a damage over time build, we don't really go for the Tailwind Elusive Onslaught thing. And I just threw this into a couple Reforged Lives, hit something decent, did an Ashling Slam, got Move Speed Onslaught. It's okay. I would actually prefer the 42% move speed from Ashling and maybe a couple other things here, but this is good enough. And then the body armor is, as you can see, there's nothing special about it really. The key here is I took a Shaper base with +1 socketed active gems, and an Elder Base with +1 support gems, put them together with an Awakener's Orb. I hit some garbage. As you can see, I pretty much hit some garbage. I crafted life on it, and we're good enough. So the reason why we want this is because it really scales up our Empower. It makes the Empower level 5, and it pushes the Essence Drain up even further, and that's why we have level 32 ED here. And then my gloves, I am very proud of my gloves. I did this by throwing an Essence of Delirium at it. I think I ended up with, if I remember correctly, I ended up with not much that was particularly good. Then I threw it into a Reforged Chaos with a suffixes cannot be changed, and I got very lucky, and I hit Chaos Damage over time multiplier. You can do this a number of times. You know, every time you have 2 Exalts, if you want to YOLO it, you just throw a fresh Essence of Delirium at it. You do suffixes cannot be changed, Reforged Chaos, and you just want to hit that Chaos dot on a Hunter base of Apothecary's Gloves. Then I did an Ashling Slam and hit the +2 level of socketed AoE gems, which is exactly what I wanted, because that means my Blight goes up to level 29, and that's why Blight is very nice. And actually, the reason why I use Blight in my gloves instead of the Essence Drain and vice versa is because the main reason is Blight costs a lot of mana. It costs 13 mana like this every time it's ticking, and you can see it's already ticking my mana down noticeably. If I have it in a 6-link in my chest, which I would arguably do a little bit more damage, the mana just becomes untenable. And yeah, I could change some things around, so channeling skills have minus mana cost, and that could be, if you really want to push your damage as far as possible for at least bossing, you could do that. But I find Bane and Essence Drain just kind of be more comfortable. Like if I find like Kosis or Omniphobia in a Delirium map, or I find like a Legion boss or something, it's much quicker to just do Bane and ED and then just keep running around. The channeling the Blight thing is really, really nice, but it makes a lot more sense for a single one-on-one fight like Cirrus or Maven. And to go into why we did Essence of Delirium, this is actually a pseudo 5-link because it gives us that socketed gems deal 30% more damage over time. This is actually extra incredible after the 3.15 support gems nerf, because now this is actually a modifier that is on par with most of the damage gems. You know, so if we look at a level 20 Void Manipulation, that's only 34% more chaos damage, and that has a 130% reservation multiplier. This is a free 30% more damage over time, and there's no additional mana cost. It's actually just incredible. So we use this with our Blight and our gloves, and this just makes it an incredible damage dealer. For the gems, the big key thing here that kind of holds the build together is the Bane. So we have a level 2120 Bane here that is just a regular Bane because it means applied curses have 10% increased effect. It's better than the alternate qualities. We have that linked with Awakened Controlled Destruction, which this league is only 30 chaos because, you know, it's not good for crit builds anymore. It's still really good for damage over time. Void Manipulation, Despair, Punishment, and Tempt Chains. So, as I said earlier, the way that Bane works is when you cast it, it will apply all of those curses, and it has a single more multiplier that is 47% times the number of curses. So we actually have 141% more damage as a more multiplier because of the triple cursing. Despair obviously makes sense. That just makes us do more damage over time, minus chaos res, etc. Tempt Chains, just incredible quality of life. You could use Enfeeble here, but especially with the way that it interacts with big bosses, I prefer Tempt Chains, and Tempt Chains just lets me not get hit in the first place instead of relying on taking less damage. Now, the key interesting thing here is Punishment. So cursed enemies take 82% increased damage while on low life. This is bonkers. So I actually have the damage numbers here. So this is the amount of damage that my skills will do when they're not on low life, and this is the total when they're not on low life, as soon as they hit that 50% mark. And so Punishment got an incredible boost by the low life changes last league. So instead of them being at 30%, it's now at 50%. So now they take 10.3 million DPS at 50% life. And so Punishment is actually pretty incredible offensively. Defensively, it's also pretty nice. Cursed enemies are debilitated for 2 seconds when they hit you. So if they do hit you once, they will then do less damage and become slower. So it's just another defensive characteristic there. In our chest, we have Essence Drain linked to Empower, Void Manipulation, Awaken, Controlled Destruction. You'll see I bought 3 of these, 30 chaos each. Awaken, Swift Affliction, and Efficacy. This is, as POB says, to me, the best setup. It's pretty nice. The upgrade here would be Awaken Void Manip, but they do cost a couple exalts right now. And with the changes to the Awaken gems, this one just was not worth the currency to me. In the gloves, I do Blight with Infused Channeling, Awaken Controlled Destruction, and Void Manipulation. Infused Channeling is really, really cool. So you'll notice when I channel for about a second, I get this infusion. What infusion does is it grants 10% more damage of types matching the supported skill gems tags. What it means is that when I gain infusion, both Bane and Essence Drain also get damage. It's a piece that kind of brings the whole thing together. That's the way I put this build together, is like, that's why I went for the staff to level up everything. And that kind of speaks to the ethos of how I put this build together, is I wanted everything to kind of be comprehensive and synergistic with each other. So I thought about ways that I could make Blight also make my Bane do more damage and my Essence Drain do more damage, and they all synergize with each other, which is very nice. In my helmet for the auras, I have an Enlighten, only level 3, because the level 4s are crazy expensive right now, with Arctic Armor, Malevolence, and a Herald of Ash, which is very fun sometimes. So I just didn't know what else to put in here. What I do sometimes is I will turn off my Aspect of the Spider and turn on Herald of Ash, and it actually makes the clear really, really good. That's another explodey that combos with Profane Bloom and the Punishment, and it makes the clear even better. Pretty much I turn that on when I'm fighting porcupines. If I find porcupines, I will turn on Herald of Ash, and it just means less spines flying at me. There are plenty of other things I could probably put in there, but that's just what I have in for kind of funsies. So Arctic Armor is kind of a standout skill to me, this patch especially. I have always really liked Arctic Armor. It's a very, very unique buff that you can put on yourself that doesn't really fit anything else in the game. I guess the closest analog would be Flesh and Stone. It's just a buff that you put on yourself that makes you take less damage. So the big thing that they did with it this league is you are now 100% immune to freeze. So with Arctic Armor on, I don't have to worry about having an anti-freeze flask. I don't have to worry about getting ailment avoidance or any of that. And you take 13% less physical and 13% less fire while stationary. Well, guess what? I'm stationary when I'm channeling Blight. So I actually take way, way less damage from those damage types while I'm channeling. Then, combined with Infusion, means that I also take 8% less chaos damage when I have Infusion from the defensive characteristics of that. So it's actually really, really nice to just stand still and be pretty tanky. In addition to that, when an enemy hits me, they become chilled, reducing their action speed by 30%. Stack that with the Super Temp Chains, with Aspect of the Spider, with the Punishment Debilitate. If a mob hits me, it basically is frozen. It's basically just frozen for 2 seconds. It's awesome. Lastly, in my boots, it's just some utility. Steel Skin, which I have on my left click, just activates when I walk around. Then Flame Dash tied to Arcane Surge, just so I can get a little bit more spell damage, a little mana regen, and Void Sphere. In the previous version of the build, I built around Void Sphere a lot more. I thought about ways that I could actually get cluster jewels that like really synergize with it. I linked it with 3 other gems. In this version, it's just one linked effectively. It is linked to Arcane Surge here technically, but this is just here for utility. So what it does is it will consume the bodies of monsters, which is really good, you know, anti-porcupines. It hinders, it pulls them all towards the center. You can kind of use it as a defensive thing. But the big utility that it gives me is that I have Wish for Death here, which says you have Culling Strike against cursed enemies. So as soon as I see a monster get to about 15% HP, I will just put Void Sphere down, make sure that they're cursed, and then as soon as they hit that 10%, Void Sphere, every single pulse is a hit, and Void Sphere will do the Culling Strike for me. I use this to finish off bosses. It's very, very nice. And so for Flasks, I tried to keep it kind of simple. It, you know, 3.15, it took a while for me to figure out how to play Flasks. I was kind of grumpy about it, but that was just me being a bit of a whiner. I have kind of sat down, I thought about the way that the Flasks work, and I've come around. Like, you know, I still wish we had more Flask charges. It does feel a little less than I would like, but I have found a way to use them in a way that I'm perfectly happy with Flask now. I actually prefer that this Flask setup instead of always pianoing all the time. What I have here is I have a Quicksilver Flask of Quickening, Alchemist. So ignore the use one become frozen. I can't become frozen, so that's just a nothing. The big key thing here is the increased cast speed during Flask effect and the increased effect, which means that I have 15% cast speed. That means I can just go around when I have this up, and my flame dash is really, really fast. This just helps my mobility honestly better than if I had the old Alchemist of Adrenaline, because instead of just being move speed, I get move speed and cast speed on this, and it just feels really good. I'm actually just able to run around and cast my flame dash really, really quickly. It just feels really, really good. You know, maybe a little copium there, but I'm happy with it now. Then I have a Panicked Divine Life Flask of Staunching. So this is, if I see my life get to half, I just press 1, I get my life back. Or if I notice that I'm bleeding, I just tap that, and then I'm immune to bleeding for 4 seconds. Pretty good. I have a Forbidden Taste, used when take a savage hit. So if I do take a pretty big hit, it will automatically trigger, and I will recover, you know, about 100% of my life on use. 25% of maximum life taken as chaos damage per second, but I have 76% chaos res, so, you know, kind of no big deal, right? It does end up giving me more life, and it's just really nice to have a utility that heals me when I take a big hit. In addition to that, I have a Quartz Flask of Grounding, use one, become shock, become immune to shock, and then a same thing for Ignite. The fact that they're granite and quartz kind of doesn't matter. They don't really do that much for me. A little bit more dodge, a little bit more armor, but they are just there for anti-shock and anti-ignite. And the way that I use it is when I'm mapping around, I really just am hitting my Quicksilver. When I see a bleed and my life is low, I just hit 1, and then I'm just Quicksilvering around. I literally never press 2 or 3 or 4. And I like the system. No more piano. My wrist feels fine. I'm just going. I'm just tapping my Quicksilver, and just running around. I'm happy with it, man. I am happy with this new flask setup. Just give me back a couple more flask charges, Chris. Chris Wilson, come on, please. All right. So for the passive tree, we are an Occultist because it's the best. Occultist is one of my favorite ascendancies. She was the first one that I really, really loved, and I really wanted to go back. I just always find myself going back to her. And, you know, if you're doing chaos damage over time, it's really hard to beat. And Profane Bloom and Malediction are they just feel really good, man. So the order of ascendancy that I would go is Void Beacon into Withering Presence, then Profane Bloom, and then Malediction last. In terms of the node priority, we are actually a hybrid build. As you can see, I do value grabbing some low-hanging fruit when it comes to energy shield, but I am mostly life-focused. So you'll see that I am just taking the life and energy shield nodes where I can get them. I take spell damage because all of the chaos damage over time spells do scale their damage over time by spell damage, and chaos damage over time, and chaos damage and damage, but they are unique, unlike other skills that are only doing damage over time, you know, scaling it their own way. These specifically have the line that says modifiers to spell damage apply to this skill's damage over time effect. So that is why I take Arcane Expanse, more AoE, more spell damage, and then just kind of go up to Atrophy, go to Growth and Decay, come down through here, grab Entropy, go down to Method to the Madness, Charisma, and grab Blood Siphon. And that's the order that I went when I was putting the build together. After that, you're going to want to grab Whispers of Doom so we can triple curse. Then you get your Cluster Jewel setup. I had just this Cluster Jewel setup until I got to level 95. Then I moved a couple points around and I grabbed this Cluster Jewel. The only thing that we're really looking for is anything that says chaos damage. Chaos damage, damage over time multiplier. Anything that says that, that's good for us. Similarly, for the Cluster Jewels, I just took a large Cluster Jewel, I threw it into Harvest, Reforge, Chaos until I hit 3 passives. As long as I could use all 3 passives, I just literally took the first thing that I could get. I landed on Unwaveringly Evil, Wicked Paul, and Unholy Grace. In this one, I landed on Unwaveringly Evil, Misery Everlasting, and Unholy Grace. And, you know, skill effect duration, Despair Curse effect, works for me. I'm really not focused on like super min-maxing like the exact ones that would give me 10% more damage. For the medium Cluster Jewels, I went for Curse effect because since we are triple cursing, I really want to push it as like the engine for all of the damage that we're doing. So 5% increased effective curse, and then 20% increased damage if we've killed a cursed enemy recently. Kind of weak, honestly, but the curse effect is nice. Wish for Death, we only want one of these. This doesn't give us any more damage. The curse skills have increased duration, actually doesn't do anything because Bane is not a curse skill, it is a hex skill. And but we want one of these for the culling strike that we can use with our Void Sphere. You can also cull with Flame Dash or Essence Drain if you want to. They also both hit. In my other one, I have another Whispers of Death and then a Misery Everlasting curse effect and skill effect duration. Now, this is what every single one of my regular jewels looks like. It is life, energy shield, and chaos damage over time multiplier. You'll see I have a bunch of these. They're pretty cheap. I have gotten them everywhere from 10 to 60 chaos, depending on the time of day and who I bought it from. Spell damage is an additional bonus. You can get some resistances, you can get some stats, whatever is good on there, but I got life, energy shield, and chaos dot. And you just fill up all those slots with every single one that you can get. The one unique jewel that we have here, as I said before, is Spreading Rot. I corrupted this with some RMR on it. You could also get Anti-Silence, Corrupted Blood, anything there. This is a very cheap jewel, so you can just buy a ton of them and corrupt for whatever you want. The key here is with at least 40 intelligence in the radius, Blight inflicts Withered for 2 seconds, and it has 50% increased hinder duration. So more quality of life there. The Wither that it inflicts is really, really nice. We can use that to stack with the Wither from our passive, and we can get to our max Wither stacks very, very quickly. If you really want to, you can actually equip 2 of these guys and get your Wither stacks even quicker, and that would possibly be a better way to ramp your single target damage. So that's my Bane Occultist. Honestly, she saved the league for me. I was pretty sad after my first couple failed attempts. I went back to Old Trusty. I put a lot of love and thought into it, and now I'm really enjoying the league. It just took some extra effort for sure. But now I'm really happy, and I'm incredibly pleased to be able to share this build with you guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I have a spreadsheet in the video description that has all of the crafting instructions and all of the stats. I have the POB in there. Definitely pop by the stream and the Discord and ask any questions that you guys may have. And I will be going through crafting instructions and actually helping out many people on stream putting this build together in the next couple weeks. There's a few people in chat that are looking for that. So definitely pop in if you are interested in putting this build together. Thank you, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye. I would like to give a special shout out to my patrons: Tricky Nick, Michael Johnson, Sailkite, Amarius, Bifrost50, Mark Hahn, Rentner, The Wrong Thing, William Lee, Aaron White, Colin, Day R, Exferdidius, Gazer 1990, Michael Rack, Mr. Doubleina, Nikolai, Sixlink Andrew, and Whoop. If you'd like to get your name in the credits of my videos and some other cool things, head over to patreon.com/subtractem. Thank you.